All right. Good day, everyone. Good day, fellow travelers on the LGFG freight train. This is Lee McCroskey. I never know how I'm going to start these, so I just begin talking. Sometimes it works. Today, if you picked up your copy of John Maxwell's 21 Laws of Leadership, and you're following along, we are going to be hitting the law of victory. Victory. So write that down. That's law number 15. And we've got 21 to go. We got 21 in total. So this will be exciting. This one's a fun one. This is one you need to know. This is a law that you need to fully adopt. And that is this. Maxwell says the law of victory means that leaders like you find a way to win. Leaders find a way to win. And if you're part of a team, if you're leading a team, leaders find a way for their team to win. So I immediately thought of myself and my own life, and so I will relate a very brief story, since you're interested mostly in me and my life. When I was a young sales manager, I was taught one thing. There were a couple of years where we were really focused on getting daily results with no excuses. So that was our theme, daily results. So when you went to a university and you're going to be interviewing students or recruiting, there was a phrase that we had drilled into our heads, which I'm thankful for now. And it was this: I never lay down my head at night without achieving daily results. That means victory. You could not go and travel and set up and get into turf, and then suddenly everything falls through and you just go, well, guess that didn't work. I'll go back to the hotel. No, you had to have victory. You had to have daily results. And so, and there were a couple times where I went there, nothing was set up, nothing was organized, all my appointments fell through. And so I actually headed onto campus, went to the union, found someone, just like floating. I was floating and I got daily results that day. So you know how it is. If your calendar's kind of semi-full and then stuff falls through on your trip, what do you do to get daily results? What do you do to achieve the law of victory? You're right. Even though you're muted, everybody said you float. That's exactly right. You go floating. So to fully flesh out this law, I want to go back in history. I want to go do some sports analogies. But I want to throw out some people who exemplify the law of victory. Let's talk about Rudy Giuliani, former mayor of New York City, a big city. Years ago, New York City was a pit. It had all kinds of crime problems. It had issues. There was absolutely, it was out of control. People were getting mugged. There was poverty was rampant. It was bad. It's still kind of bad, but not as bad as it used to be. So Giuliani went in there in his first 2 years in office. His policies helped reduce serious crime by 1/3. And he cut the city's murder rate in half. And police shootings fell by 40%. He decided he was going to make things happen, no excuses. He had a welfare to work program, and that helped about over 500,000 New Yorkers land employment. And even after 9/11, some years later, you know, that disaster that tremendously affected our economy, he was on the scene within a few minutes after the planes hit the towers. And after the second plane crash, he actually coordinated all the rescue operations. And they estimate that he saved over 20,000 lives. So big deal. Got in there, made things happen. The law of victory, even in a dark time. So let me talk just for a minute about living the law of victory. I'll do an aside. There's a mindset that you, and write this down. I'll give you a few things to write down. Losing is not an option, semicolon. Winning is mandatory. And when things are going wrong, crisis seems to bring out the best in leaders and the worst. Let's talk about Winston Churchill, one of my favorite people. From back in history, if you don't know Winston's story, I won't tell you his whole bio, but he became Prime Minister of the UK on May 10th, 1940. the day that Hitler invaded France and some of your countries, in fact. Yes. Well, the first few weeks when he was in charge of England, there were absolute military disasters. Everything was going poorly. France surrendered. The British Army evacuated from Dunkirk. The UK then was under direct attack from the Nazis in the Battle of Britain and the Blitzkrieg. So what Churchill did from his command center in a bunker was he gave a series of famous speeches and broadcasts that were designed to help people's morale and help in the darkest time, help the people figure out that victory could be achieved. So I got some quotes from Winston Churchill from some of his victory at all costs speeches. Here's one. This pretty much tells the story. He said this: "What is our aim? I can answer in one word: victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory, however long and hard the road may be, for without victory, there's no survival." Pretty strong. So he said this. I got more quotes. Let me give you a couple more. "We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender." Yes. So this, and to put this, we're not in World War II. We're not in the trenches. We're not being gassed. We're not assaulting, another army in World War II. This isn't life or death. But what we're doing in sales, there's fear involved with that. So you have to decide, what kind of day am I going to have? What kind of week am I going to have this week? Am I set up? Am I good to go? When things fall through and the plans change, how do I react to that? One last quote from Winston Churchill. He said this. This is a good one to write down. "If you're going through hell, keep going." I like that. Don't stop if you're in hell. So if you're going through hell, keep going. Clever. All right. World of sports. Some of you are like, "Oh, war is so negative. It makes me sad." You're right. Well, let's talk about sports. If you follow any sports, I am partial to a few American sports. Let's talk about the NFL, the National Football League. Some of you may follow some of our teams, and you're rooting perhaps for the Patriots, who've won a number of Super Bowls. Anybody Patriots fans? My hand's not up. Anybody have heard of the Patriots? And now, okay, 8 of you. Good. I thought my analogy was really going to fall apart. Well, Tom Brady is the quarterback of the Patriots. Currently, as of yesterday, they are 9-2. 9 wins, 2 losses, which is pretty good. Last year, his team, under his leadership, he's now 40 years old, so he's getting kind of up there. They had 172 wins, 51 losses, and had a winning percentage of .771, which is ridiculous. So the Patriots have developed a habit, an expectation of winning under Brady. They always know, and they figure out a way to win. That's the law of victory. Last year, if you watched the Super Bowl, who watched the Super Bowl? All right. 3 of you. Well, here's what happened. Halftime of the Super Bowl, the Atlanta Falcons, the underdogs, they were up by, I think, 24-0. They were up by 24 points, and they were like high-fiving, going, "Yeah, we're so far ahead. We didn't even know what we're going to win. We're champions. We're overconfident." And what does overconfidence do? Overconfidence is the feeling you get right before you find out differently. So Tom Brady started at halftime in the third quarter and started to touchdown after touchdown. They came back and actually eclipsed the score and won in the end. It was tremendous. The greatest comeback of all time. Law of victory. If you don't like football, American type football, think of Pele. Remember Pele back in the day, the great Brazilian soccer player? Some of you weren't alive when he was, but Pele did it in soccer. He won 3 World Cups for Brazil. I think of, I know some of you may be NBA fans. I think of Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was a ridiculous leader for his team because he willed victory for his team and for himself. And he raised everybody's level of play just by being on the court. So let me give you something to write down, because you're like, well, what do we do? We're stuck. We don't understand all these analogies and people we've never heard of. Okay, well, let's write this down. There are 5 components of victory, according to John Maxwell. 5 components. Number 1, most important, the leader's resolve. The leader's resolve. His or her commitment that something good is going to come out of this, that we're going to win, that this trip is going to count if I'm spending money to travel, right? So the leader's resolve. Number 2, unity of vision, Maxwell says, unity of vision. That means although all of us are completely different personalities, different motivations, different fears, different hopes, different goals, if we can have a unity of where things are going as an organization or in your office, things will go better. That leads to victory. The more Dimitri can cast the vision and everybody get behind it, the more unity there is. I mean, if we're all just like, hey, we're 50 salespeople, we just sell suits, I'm making some money, have a nice day, then not much will happen. But if there's unity of vision, victory for everybody. Number 3, diversity of skills. Diversity of skills. That just means we all have different skills, and that's a good thing. We can drive each other crazy with some of those diverse personalities, and that's okay too. But you got to have diversity to be creative. Number 4, if you're a leader, you raise your team members to their potential. Number 4, raising team members to their potential. I always figured when I was a director of sales development at Southwestern, my job and my marketing team was to remove all the impediments from in front of my team. My job was to do the blocking to make sure that they could be their best self, right? So my job was to find out what they wanted, how they could plug into the vision, and then clear the path. I wanted them to reach their potential. You can do that for yourself and the people you work with. Number 5, the 5th component of victory for Maxwell is to know and use each other's strengths. Know and use each other's strengths. Some of you are very good tacticians, you know, like the Jorgen, very, analyze the situation, devise a plan of action, proceed without delay. Some of you are more ebullient and enthusiastic and exciting to impact, like Rachel Gibbings, she's sort of woohoo, and that can inspire I don't know what that was, woohoo, that can inspire others to be positive, to be excited. So know each other, use each other's strengths, because we need each other. All right, so let me kind of, I've got some good questions for you guys to talk about today, and I will send that out in an email along with the recording here, but I'll read them to you too, because I want you to think about these. But before I give you the questions to close, let me tell you one more story. And how many of you are familiar with, I'm going back into history, ancient Spanish history, the years 1519. How many of you have heard of Hernando Cortez? Cortez. Anyone? 1, 2. All right, this is great. Okay, well, let me teach you a little history. Cortez was on a mission of conquest. He was commissioned by the Queen of Spain to head over, sail across the Atlantic Ocean, and to land in Mexico, and not only explore, but to bring back treasure from the shores of the Yucatan. And the great civilization that was already there, and it created this massive amount of wealth, and it was the Aztec people, if you've heard of the Aztecs. So their goal was, they sailed across the ocean, they were to seize the treasures that they'd heard about, and then return to Spain. So I'll tell you, I won't tell you the whole story, but it's pretty legendary. Cortez was an excellent motivator. So he convinced more than 500 soldiers and 100 sailors to sail those soldiers to go from Spain to Mexico. They took 11 ships, and they were going to obtain by force the world's largest and richest treasure at that time. So the question is how a small band of Spanish, that's not many people to conquer a nation of thousands, but how a small band of Spanish soldiers arrived in a strange country and then swiftly brought back and overthrew the Aztecs and brought back that treasure. So for Cortez, when he got off the boat and all the folks were on the shore, all the soldiers and sailors, he didn't say, okay, gang, let's go get them. Victory is at hand. He said 3 words to his men. He said, burn the ships. Yes, he said, burn the ships. They said, excuse me, I didn't quite hear what you said. They said in Spanish. Some of you know Spanish, like Jumo, you need to help us here. But he said, burn the ships. And that changed history, because as the men watched their ships, that's their way back. They're like, how are we going to get back home with all this treasure? He said, we will take their boats back. So as some people say, you got to burn your bridges. Well, he burned the ships. There was no other choice. So against all the odds, he conquered the Aztecs, and he succeeded in something where others had been unsuccessful in trying to take on the Aztecs for more than 6 centuries. So that's a thought for that's a great story for the law of victory. When I was speaking with the Australian team yesterday, Maiko commented, I was asking him who has an example of when you sort of closed all the doors and you committed. And he said that when he joined LGFG, he had other options, but he said, you know what? In order to be successful here, I cannot have a plan B. So he closed all the doors, cut off all his options, and said, this is it. I'm going for it. I'm all in. No plan B. And that is what the law of victory is all about. Okay? So think about that for yourself. Here are some questions you should consider. 1, do I have a victory mentality? Or do I make excuses not to get results? Do I have a victory mentality? Talk about that. I know some of you do because I talked to you. Here, so that leads right into the next question. Am I willing to do whatever it takes to win? Am I willing to do whatever it takes to win, to make something happen, to achieve daily results, to make the sale? Yeah? Number 3, this is a good one. Think of a time you've been at your best regarding the law of victory. In other words, think of a time when you actually practiced the law of victory. You burned your bridges. You said, I am going for it. And you did. That's a good thing to remember. Rehearse that. That's a good little video to run in your head. Here's another good question. I'm full of good questions. Who do I know that models this law? Who do I know that models this law? Is someone in my office good at it? Watch them. Spend time with them. Download their mentality, because that's what you need. You need to adopt this law fully if you want to really do well at LGFG. If you want to be average, do what average people do. That's make excuses. And here's the last question. What do I need to do to improve in this area? What do I need to do to improve in this area? All right. So I'm excited because very soon in February, the Olympics are going to return. And the Olympics, if you're like somebody that needs motivation, you can watch the highlights of the Olympics. And I'll remind you, this is going to be an assignment for you, because those athletes have sacrificed much to achieve victory, and they have great stories. So prepare for that. So the overall theme today is decide that losing is not an option and winning is mandatory. And I'll close with this thought that I learned many years ago, and some of you will recognize. There are 2 kinds of people in the world: people who find a way to victory and people who make excuses. Right? Two kinds of people. People who find a way and people who make excuses. There you have it. That is your leadership motivation for today. Does anyone have a comment? I don't know how to unmute people. Oh, yes, I can. I can unmute people if you wave at me. But any thoughts on this? Or great examples? Okay. Okay. Good. Well, that is all from this end from Nashville, Tennessee. I wish you well. Get excited about the holidays coming up. Great time for people to buy suits. From you, have a pleasant day. Until next week. See ya.